Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that the right book at the right time can change lives, and that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So that's what we do here on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature: picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels for readers of all ages. In each episode, we'll talk with children's literature authors and discuss their books, their hopes, their dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. Whether you're an adult reading to their inner child or connecting the young readers in your life with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. So grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of KidLit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie Affinito, your KidLit Loving host, inviting you back to another weekly conversation with children's literature author. Today I'm talking with Lisa Tolin. Lisa is passionate about all things storytelling and is the author of the picture book How to Be a Rock Star, a hilarious book about one little kid who really loves rock and roll and explains everything there is to know about starting a rock band. She's here today to talk about her newest picture book. Can you imagine? The Life and Art of Yoko Ono. This lyrical picture book biography explores the art, music, and creativity of Yoko Ono's extraordinary life. There is so much to learn and discuss here today, so let's get right to the episode. Lisa, welcome to KidLit Love. I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you. I'm used to hearing your voice, but it's really your love of Kid that comes through so clearly. So it's really just a joy to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that literal KidLit Love comes through everyone's earphones, and I think today is even more special for KidLit Love because we're talking about my favorite genre. I adore nonfiction picture book biographies. I love them. I feel like they light up a different part of my brain when I can learn about someone else's life and their process and their passion and their contributions. So everybody's going to hear the love, I think, doubly today when we talk about your book. But before we talk about your book, I do want to talk about you. I would love for you to talk a little bit about yourself. I know storytelling has been woven into lots of different aspects of your life. Can you tell us about you and your work, and of course, your journey to coming to children's literature?
Yeah, I mean, it has been a long journey. I guess how long do you have? But I spent most of my career as a journalist, working for the Associated Press for a long time, and then for NBC for another decade or so. I've been storytelling and specifically telling nonfiction for a long time, but in a really different way. And I think, that creative part of my brain was a little bit itching to be set free. And I'd always, I have always loved writing, but I never really thought I was a super creative person, or maybe I wasn't as good at, you know, lyricism, because I think journalism sort of beats that out of you. So, moving into children's writing was just, you know, d- I would say it was prompted by my kids, but it really actually started before that. Like, I really have always loved the form of picture books,
Yeah.
and really thought that was something that would be amazing to do. I didn't think I was a person who could do it. And it certainly hasn't been easy to do it. But I am glad that I put myself out there and tried something different, because it's been incredibly rewarding.
Yeah. So how did you do it? Did you just say, okay, that's it. I'm going to start writing? Did you take a class? I want to know the how right now, because so many of us relate to what you said about, oh, I love this, but I couldn't do it. It's not for me. And you push past that. So I would love to know the nitty gritty of how you did that.
Yeah, I started really with a class a fair amount of time ago that was about writing across different children's genres. And I remember, I think like most people, my first attempt at a picture book was rhyming and probably trying to be like Dr. Seuss, which I think a lot of people start with. And I remember coming out of that class thinking, oh, I shouldn't do picture books. I should really do middle grade because that's more of where my voice is. Um, but of course, that wasn't where my heart was, so I had to kind of come back to it much later and really just try again and drop the rhyme and, kind of learn the basics of how to put it together, learn more visual storytelling. So I did take a few classes to start.
Yeah. I've learned so much on this podcast about how writers take that jump or make that leap of faith. And so much of it does seem to be surrounding yourself with the people and the groups and the classes and the information that can just help you feel ready to finally do that. So it sounds like that was the case for you too.
Oh, incredibly. I found such a great community. I took some classes at Gotham Writers Workshop here in New York City, and my teacher connected me with another of his former students who, Marcy Colleen, who is now, also a pretty prolific picture book and now graphic novel writer. And so I worked with her a bit and I met other people through her. So it all sort of branched out and became this huge community. And that's really, I think, so needed, especially for somebody like me who might lack the confidence
Yeah.
to think I should keep going. Just having sort of other people who are doing the same thing as you has just been incredibly motivating and kept me on the path.
Yeah. And there's just something, I've said it before, about the KidLit community. Everybody's so just kind and welcoming and wants to just welcome everyone into this children's literature world because we know how powerful it can be when that child finds that book that they needed or was meant for them. That's the magic, right? Of where it happens.
I
Mm.
think so. And I think that people who write for children really have to be open and vulnerable in a way that maybe not everybody else is in every other aspect of your life. And so I think sometimes you make these like instant connections where it's like your childhood best friends and you've just found your person.
Yeah.
So that's exciting to be around people who kind of share the dream.
Yeah, it is. That's why we're here. We're sharing in this love of children's literature. So, thinking about your newest book that we're talking about today, Can You Imagine? The Life and Art of Yoko Ono? What made you decide to write a picture book biography and go in this direction with this person? I'd love to know the inspiration behind the book.
Yeah, well, I mean, it really is also a long journey, maybe even longer than my picture book writing journey because I interviewed Yoko 20 years ago now when I was working at the AP, and there was a new musical about the life of John Lennon. So I went to go interview Yoko at the Dakota, and I've interviewed a fair number of people over the years, but she was just this incredible presence. There was something about her that I instantly kind of understood something about her that the way she had been portrayed
Mhm.
over the years was not who she was. And I just kind of had that instant recognition that she was this incredible person. And it's kind of silly, but my first thought was, of course he loved her, because I had grown up, like many people, hearing about her from the perspective of Beatles fans. So over the years, I sort of became more and more interested in her story and her resilience. And I thought that was something that would really translate well for kids.
Mhm. Well, I think for kids and adults, right? That's the best part of getting to take a deeper dive into someone's life. It's of course for kids to know who they are, to get inspired. Uh, but it's also for adults to enjoy. This morning before the recording, I went out to breakfast with my dad. And he's like, "So what are you doing today?" And I was like, "Well, I'm interviewing Lisa Tolin, and she wrote a book about Yoko Ono." And his eyes just lit up. He's like, I wish I could listen to that one because you're going to talk about her work. You're going to talk about her concerts. You're going to talk about the Beatles. He was just as lit up as a little kid might be learning about someone new. So this book definitely has a place in children's literature, but I imagine a lot of adults like you in your interviews with her got to see a different side, a different perspective, and I imagine adult readers will really appreciate that too.
Yeah, I hope so. I've talked to it, it's interesting because I think she's such a polarizing figure still. And there are people who are like, "Oh my God, I'm the biggest Yoko fan. Tell me everything." And then there are other people who say, "Well, why would you want to write about her?" Like she's, and we actually had an editor say, "I still haven't forgiven her for breaking up the Beatles." So there are people who still feel that way about her,
Right.
and you really can't change their minds. But I hope that this reveals different layers of her. And she's somebody who deserves to be appreciated separate from the Beatles story. She is an artist who was really quite revolutionary, and just an extraordinary person. So I hope that she's able to be seen the way she deserves to be seen.
How did you unpack all of those layers? I know you had the chance to interview her and talk live, but what did the rest of that research process look like for pulling all of this and all of the different aspects of her and her work together?
Well, for me, the research process is the fun part. It's really amazing. You just kind of get to keep going down these different rabbit holes and reading all the books and doing all the watching the videos and just seeing the way things played out over the years. But I am so fortunate because she speaks about her own life so poetically and beautifully that I got to kind of pull parts of that.
Mm.
Um, Somebody commented to me about the line where, she meets John at the gallery. They kind of have this back and forth interaction, and then it it says, she realizes that he plays the same games she plays. Well, that's her line. That's the way she described it. Um, and she spoke about, she's kind of had these threads through her art and through the way she talks about her life, where she talks a lot about the sky. She talks a lot about just different kind of thematic elements, the air, that sort of lend themselves to threading throughout the narrative. So I was inspired by her to write, based on those sort of images.
Yeah. So it's mining all of the things that she's put out there for herself and just letting yourself go down the rabbit hole, which was my favorite thing to do, to just dive into someone's work. And you do put so much into the book. Like you really do get this beautiful, layered, and expansive view of starting in childhood and the moves she makes through childhood, the things that she goes through in childhood, and of course, the years that everyone perhaps feels like they know more about. But then the years after the years everyone thinks they know about. So you did, I don't know how you did it in a picture book because you have so few words that you were able to do, but I did close that last page feeling like I knew her from the very beginning, and what that life was like. And that must have been hard to condense and to pick and choose what to put in. And so I'm wondering about your process of pulling from that and deciding on this format, this approach that you used, because I was really surprised how much you packed in to such few pages of a picture book.
Yeah, I mean, and I could have had so much more. And I think the beautiful thing about a picture book and the very hard thing about a picture book is that it's limiting. And so you really have to make some hard choices about what you want to emphasize. But that helps you kind of draw out a theme in a book because you can't include everything. There's just no way. So you have to decide which things are really supporting the ideas that you want to have come across.
Mhm.
And for this book, I really wanted to focus on, her revolutionary power of imagination. She used it as a child to escape war. She used it, obviously with John in these very public campaigns and ways. she used it in this incredible song that is still, I think, the most popular song. I'd have to go look, but it's one of the most covered, most played songs of the century. And so the imagination was something that really I thought would resonate with kids. And her art is so imaginative. I mean, it was just sort of everywhere. She embodies it for me.
And for me, I didn't realize some of the things that you talk about in the picture book towards the end around her creativity, like the wish tree. I call it the wish tree because of another middle grade novel, but the broken pottery, things I didn't know. I just knew that surface level information, but to really get into that level of creativity and her messages of peace that she's spreading, it really was so inspiring to know about.
Yeah, the wish tree is still, I just went well, in February, I went to go see the largest ever installation of the wish tree here in New York for her birthday, which was amazing. And it was, I think, 93 trees around the Armory in New York, and people just attach their wishes. And it's so poignant to see everybody's wishes coming together in that way. And some of them are just silly, like I wish my husband would take out the trash. And some of them are really profound about, peace and human difficulties. People talk about their illnesses, they talk about their family members who are struggling. And all of these things kind of come together in one place, and it's beautiful.
Yeah. It's that imagination that brings a community together. It's that full circle kind of feeling that you can feel really deeply at the end of your book. But you do also have, which I always love seeing at the end, is the extra, right? The information at the back that does give a little bit more detail about her life, about some other things and pictures, as well. So can you talk about that? I just want listeners to know that back matter is also there and equally as important.
Yeah, I mean, and I had fun writing the back matter. I mean, we talked about what conceptual art is, which is something that I think is, new for a lot of kids, and just trying to explain that in a succinct and, clear way wasn't easy, but I think, there are so many ways, as you say, bringing the community together. There's so many ways that she emphasized that humans are all alike. She had a movie where she just showed people's butts, which, is silly and kids might appreciate and enjoy. But the point of that too is that we all have butts, like as much as we all might think we're different and seem to be different, we have these things in common. And she was always emphasizing that and emphasizing the power of collective imagination, which is also really the power of collective action. It wasn't just the mind, it was how we can come together and make things happen.
That was the
So yeah, we talked about the art. We talked about a little bit more about her life and the War is Over campaign. Um, yeah, it was there's a lot of ground to cover with anyone's life, I think, but she's such an interesting person with so many different facets of her life. We wanted to bring those all across.
Mhm. And I do want to mention too, I mean, the words are beautiful. The way that you have packed so much in such few pages, but in such a very invitational way. But the illustrations paired with what you have put on the page, they're gorgeous, listeners. These illustrations, you have these deep hues and these watercolor like images. You've got alternating pages where the background is colored and yet the background is white. Oh my gosh, I'd love for you to talk about how you think your words were brought to life in those gorgeous, gorgeous illustrations.
Yeah, I mean, Yaz Imamura is the illustrator, and I was a big fan of hers before this, but wow, she blew me away. I mean, I want to hang all of these on my wall personally. She really created such beautiful images. And she pulled out her own themes. She has throughout some bird imagery that, wasn't mentioned in the text, but that she brought a new kind of unifying thread. And I know it's not easy to portray another artist's work as an artist. I would be super intimidated by that. But I think for her, it pushed her to try things in a little bit of a different way than she usually does. So she did things a little more loose and a little more, um, you know, using different kinds of lines and starting in a different place than she normally does. And I think the results are extraordinary.
They are. I finished reading your book the first time, and then I went back, of course, the second time. But I kept going back because every time I looked, there was something else in the illustrations that was just bringing your words to life. And you're right, you could just take each page out, and they are like these little individual works of art, which is, as you mentioned, a pretty amazing accomplishment when you're talking about another artist, which must difficult, but oh, they are beautiful. They're beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm blown away by the beauty of the images, but also just, there's some things that she had to portray that aren't beautiful, that she had to cover some really kind of ugly things, including, the assassination of John Lennon, which is not an easy thing. And um I wasn't sure how she would picture that, but the way she did it was really, to my mind, it adds its own layer of kind of poetry to the moment. She shows them gathered around a birthday cake and then blowing out the candles, and that's sort of the hint that of toward what happened. So it's another very difficult thing. She also had to portray, the hatred that she was facing, and she did that in a really beautiful way too. So, compliments to the chef on that one.
Absolutely. I agree. It wraps up the whole experience about learning about her life and the beautiful messages inside to the beautiful pictures that are on the page. When you think about this book getting into readers' hands, whether they're children, whether they're adults like my dad, who can't wait to now get my copy of the book. What is your hope for readers, your hope for this book as it goes out into the world?
So I really hope that a child reading this would understand the power of imagination and understand how it can change your own life, how powerful it can be, and how powerful it can be to the world. I really hope that kids will help us imagine our way to a better future, especially in a moment like this. I think a fair amount of imagination is needed. So I really hope that they will understand that about themselves. And I also hope that they'll be inspired by her resilience, because I personally, I'm sort of a people pleaser, and just understanding the amount of hatred she's had to absorb over the years, but she kept going and she kept creating and she kept, making beautiful things. I probably would have gone and crawled under a desk and hid for the next 50 years, but she didn't do that. And so I think just understanding that you don't have to absorb what other people throw at you. You don't have to care about other people's opinions. You can keep going, you can keep creating. That's something I'm personally still trying to internalize, but I hope hearing it from an earlier age will be helpful.
Yeah. I just keep thinking the world needs that message. The whole world needs that message right now. And yes, if you could internalize that as a child, if you're getting to read this book in childhood, there really is no better gift, I would think, than to understand that and have that model, that role model there as a way for you to move in the world, just feeling good and worrying about you. Of course, the world as well, but maybe not what's being said or being thrown at you, and to realize that, you are you, and that's okay, and that's good, and you're going to do special things.
Right, because I mean, in her time, I mean, she was obviously in this extraordinary position of being in an incredible spotlight and having all of this attention on her. But today's kids are on social media. They're having a ton of attention on them in their own way that I didn't have to grow up dealing with. And that scares me for them. It really
I agree.
makes me worried. And if you're having people like or dislike your outfit, or kind of scrutinizing everything you post, I think we need to work on building up kids' resilience to that, because it's a frightening world we've thrown them into, where basically everyone's a celebrity.
Well, I think your book is definitely going to do that. And I'm happy and excited and grateful to share this book and that message. Um, and I'm so glad that you came on to talk about it. Now, where can listeners find you? Keep up with maybe what's coming next in your world, find you online, social media, perhaps, even though we just talked about the negative effects of them. Where's the best place to
True.
connect with you?
It is true. I am on Instagram. If you won't, please don't judge my outfits. Yeah, I'm on Instagram as L Tolin. I'm on Blue Sky. I have a website, lisatolin.com. And I have even a newsletter where I can send. I try to get other people's book reviews and the things other people are reading up there, but I'll send a little bit of news about my own books too.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so I will put links to all of those places in the show notes. Of course, along with links to direct access. Just click and grab your beautiful book as well. So thank you. Thank you so much for coming on to talk about it. I loved it. My dad's gonna love it. It's already spreading the book love. Thank you.
You
Thank
have to get
you.
your dad his own copy. We'll send.
Thank you so much for coming on to talk about it. It was wonderful.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And listeners, thank you for listening to another episode of KidLit Love, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all of the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. You'll also find KidLit Love on Substack. That's where you'll find posts for each episode, monthly KidLit roundups, and an invitation to join my summer book club and go deeper into the world of children's literature. And if you loved this podcast and want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing to build a life you love. One more thing. If you loved what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of Kid Lit Love. Thanks for listening.